What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose, the second episode of the week. We are back from the bye week, even though it didn't really feel like a bye week because we ended up having to do an episode from Monday after the big news of Brian Ferentz getting canned. So if you want to go back and listen to that episode, you certainly can. It was about a 30-minute episode, just kind of an instant reaction. 2 days later now, have some a little bit more thoughts after, hearing Kirk's presser yesterday and just kind of, in the words of Skip Bayless, sleeping on it, have some things to say. So what's going on, Tyler?
That was horrible. You should not mention that guy on this podcast. Okay.
He always uses that line though. So
yeah, after I slept on it, I'm like, what is there to really think about after you have to sleep on it? But that's quite a line right there. Shout out Skip Bayless. Fuck that guy. Yeah, excited to kind of dive into some of the comments that Kirk made during his press conference. I know me and you kind of have some thoughts on that, and then obviously game this week, which I'm excited for. Obviously, after the bye week of not having or watching any Iowa football, I'm excited to get back to watching them play.
And I can't believe it's already November. It's just crazy to
November
think that
1st.
it's
wow.
November football now. It's where it all matters. And yeah, it's just crazy. So
a few games left. We're on the home stretch.
And then hopefully, knock on wood, another game, and then hopefully a bowl game. But we'll see. We'll see how the next 4 games go if we even get to that point. For the obviously the bowl game, we already made it. I'm talking the Big Ten championship game. So yeah, going back to yesterday's presser real quick, because this is pretty obvious. I think it pretty much tells you from what he had to say that kind of what we predicted and everyone kind of predicted, that he had no say in this, and that he honestly was a little was kind of unaware that it was gonna kind of come down. It sounded like it was over the weekend. They met and that's when it happened. So it wasn't like something where the past few weeks he kind of knew this was coming, or, there was a chance this might happen. It all just kind of happened. And for me, my first initial kind of reaction to all this was, there's a part of me where I do feel a little sorry for Kirk about all this, because it does suck. I mean, just with it happening, and you could tell just from what he said yesterday. He didn't say it specifically, but you could just tell reading between the lines and just hearing his voice that you could tell he was hurt and he was angry by all this. But at the same time, though, he created this entire situation. He allowed it to continue when he should have done something about it. Should have done something about it after the 2021 season, and certainly should have done something about it after last year. And he just allowed it to continue. And really, it's his fault, because this whole offensive scheme that he runs and his preferences has kind of handcuffed his son to being able to do anything. So so at one part of me, I feel for him a little bit, but at the same time, it's man, this is all on you. This is your doing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a situation where, you feel bad in the sense that it's a son and it had to happen this way, right? And it had to kind of come to this. But I mean, you mentioned it. It didn't have to come to this situation where Beth had to essentially do it herself. Kirk could have had that conversation with Brian a year or two ago and been like, hey, man, let's end this on good terms. Because it's not gotten any better. And at the same time, it is mostly Kirk's fault, because it is Kirk's offense. And you're right. Brian only calls the plays. I mean, he doesn't design the plays. Yeah. So it's just, it's kind of a messy situation. And the way it happened, the way it, ended, obviously probably it could have ended better, but Beth had to make this decision, bottom line. I saw something on Twitter today and I shared it with you, Collin. And it's at the very least, Brian deserves to be fired for being the quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
Because our quarterbacks suck right now behind. And I'm not saying Cade sucks, but he didn't play great. And I know he wasn't healthy basically the entire year. So I give that kind of a pass. But let's look at recent memory and our track record with quarterbacks at Iowa. It ain't good. Best quarterback that we've had was the last one was CJ Beathard, which was
Yep.
what, 20,
Almost a
what was
decade
that?
ago, which is hard to
Yeah,
believe.
almost 10 years ago. So that alone should constitute a firing for Brian Ferentz. And, again, like this is all because it's his son that this is all a big deal. And the contract situation with Brian, 25 points per game thing, everything is blown out of proportion. You didn't do your job. That's the bottom line. It's got to start somewhere.
Yep.
And that's the first domino to fall for sure.
And, when you think about it, Kirk did do something back in 2021 after the season, after it was such a horrible season. He did do something. He made him the quarterback's coach, which is just like, what are we doing here? So the next thing I want to kind of get into with the offense is with this whole situation. So he mentioned yesterday how, and it was almost kind of like taking a shot at Beth in a way when he said like, he's been doing this for 25 years and it's been pretty successful where he doesn't do anything during the middle of the season. And he waits till after the year to evaluate from top to bottom the program and see things. And it's just funny to me because it's like, okay, if you actually do that every year, what did you evaluate the last couple
hypocrisy,
years? So
100%.
Is he that oblivious to the offense, or does he just get to the point where he just doesn't care? And, since it's his son, it's whatever. I want to know. I want to know how he evaluated the last couple of years, because you cannot sit there and say that after the 2021 season that he sat there, even though we did go 10-2, made it the Big Ten championship game, got blown out, and we lost in the bowl game. Like, you can't sit there after the season and be like, oh, that was good. And then certainly not after last year. So that is where I get like, what are we doing here? And that's another part where it's like, Kirk, like, come on, man. Like, I love you, but like, dude, like, you got to do a better job of this. If that is the case, if like you're actually evaluating from top to bottom, it needs to be a lot better. I mean, you must not be a very good evaluator at that point.
I was to say that's pretty hypocritical of him to say, because, while I understand loyalty and I understand, maybe playing out the season and seeing how things go and then evaluating, I'm fine with that. But he has never fired a coach in 25 years. Is that correct?
Nope. Well, yeah, no, he hasn't.
Yeah. So what are, like you said, what are we evaluating here? Are we evaluating the fact that we won 8 games last year? Are we evaluating the fact that we were, 6-2 right now? I mean, is it about the games, or is it about offense, defense, special teams? Because I feel like most head coaches go into the offseason evaluating each phase of the game and seeing where they can improve. And we have only gotten worse on offense these last how many years under Brian. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't really understand that. And I think, I don't know if it was necessarily a shot at Beth, but it's like, when you say, oh, I've been doing this for 25, it's like show her that you have that ability to make a change then, and maybe she wouldn't do what she did. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's more like he is so like stubborn in the fact that he really, I think deep down thinks that this style of offense, this style is what's best for Iowa. And he's just unwilling to get to the point where it's like, you got to tweak it a little bit, and you don't have to blow it all up. You can keep and we've been saying this for months, for years, that like the system, you can keep doing it, but make it more modern, kind of like what the NFL has done. But he's just unwilling to do that. So kind of then the last sort of bit of all this before we get into the Northwestern game is, will Kirk come back after all this? Now, yesterday, like after the presser, it was pretty easy because the emotions were high for people to think like, oh, he's done. I mean, just the way you could just tell. And I don't think that's a really fair shot to like look at it. I think, emotions were high. So it's hard to say, like, for me, like, I'm like 70-30, where I think 70% chance he'll come back, 30% chance he won't. And maybe that will change throughout the next couple months. But it does sound like if he does come back, which I think like Beth is expecting him to, he's going to have full control on who the new offensive coordinator is, which, man, like I am feeling pretty worried about that, because I truly think, and I said this on the instant reaction to Brian Ferentz getting fired, is I believe that if he comes back and he obviously picks a new OC, it's going to be his decision. I really think he is going to be unwilling to really go out and find an offensive coordinator that knows what the hell they're doing and runs their own system. I really think it's going to be like a John Boudmeyer, who we talked about, or like someone mentioned, like a Paul Chris, like someone that runs a style of offense that Kirk can just still have all the control over. Yep. Yeah. And I feel very worried about that situation. Now, like with like Paul Chris, the problem I have with him is, he was offensive coordinator from 2008 to 2012 at Wisconsin. Then he went to head coach at Pitt, and then he was at Wisconsin as head coach, and then he got fired last year. The problem with him, look at Wisconsin the last 10 years. Their quarterbacks weren't very good. He wasn't a very good developer at the quarterback position. I mean, think about you can't even really name many good Wisconsin quarterbacks besides Russell Wilson when he came for that 1 year, right? So why would I want him? Or then this John Boudmeyer, like clearly he hasn't really done much for us. He's been with Iowa since the start of last year. Look at our quarterbacks. They haven't developed. So like, why would I want John Boudmeyer to be our offensive coordinator? But I just feel like that's where, like, I just don't see Kirk do. And that's where it's like, oh my God. Like, that's where it's like, I love Kirk, but like, if he's unwilling to, it's like, I do not want that moving forward.
So that's the next step. The next piece of all this is Kirk's future. If he decides to hang it up, I actually, and like, this is not me wanting Kirk to retire, but I'm just saying, I feel a lot more confident that we will modernize our offense with a new head coach who allows to, bring in an OC, or if the head coach is an offensive minded guy, maybe he's the OC too. I agree with you. My greatest fear is that Kirk will return, he will get his choosing of who the offensive coordinator is, and our offense will look the exact same. A la Greg Davis.
Yep.
A few years ago.
Ken O'Keefe.
It's all the same. At the end of the day, it's the same thing. And we will be back to square one talking about the same situation come next year if that happens. And at that point, I agree with you. I don't want Kirk back if he's not willing to change his outlook on this offense and to allow other guys who know what they're doing to modernize it, to make it better than dead last in the country, which we've been the last how many years. Really quick, small prime example, and this is, I understand Alabama has way better athletes than Iowa, but just a few years ago, you could remember their style of offense of running the ball, this non-mobile QB that doesn't have to throw it that much. They have all this really good run game. What have they done in the last few years? They've modernized their offense. They've spreaded it out. They can still go heavy in power, but they've spreaded it out. They've got mobile QBs who can make plays with their legs. Like, it's the time that we're in. Do we want to be competitive against the top tier teams or not? I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
This is what I'm afraid of. And I hope I'm dead wrong when I say this, but knowing Kirk and how stubborn he kind of is, I just feel like so this whole thing happens with Brian. It looks, really bad on his part. It makes Brian look really bad. Yeah. Why would Kirk, I feel like he's not going to want to go out and find a really good offensive coordinator. And like, let's say things do turn around, it's way better. Then it's going to make Brian look even worse. It's going to make Kirk look even worse. Cause it's like, why did we not do this 2 years ago, 3 years ago? That's where I feel like he's like going to be unwilling to do that, because he doesn't, like, I just feel like deep down, like knowing like how Kirk operates and kind of his stubbornness, like he's not going to want that to happen, which is just like, come on.
So you're saying that if we got a new OC that did what he, like, let him do his own thing and we start doing way better, people are going to be like, what the hell, Kirk?
Yeah, like, why do we not do this for the last how many years? And I don't know. I was just thinking that. I'm like, God,
that's a really selfish thing to hold back a team like that because of your own ego. But
it could happen. I could see it happen.
Possibility. Yeah.
I mean, you talk the last couple of years, his ego of keeping Brian, putting him kind of in front of the program itself. I mean, come on. So,
Collin, really quick, my question to you is, after listening to Kirk's presser, if it was up to Kirk, would Brian be back next year?
And I wrote that down in my notes. I think so. I really think,
I do too.
Judging from what he said, I know David Eichel said it too, like reading between the lines, that I think he would have blamed the injuries this year and would have blamed that held this offense back. And I really do think Brian would have came back next year. If, like, let's say Beth was like, yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Right.
So let's say Kirk doesn't come back. Like, let's say Kirk does retire and he goes off in the sunset, and we built the statue for him outside of Kinnick, and we cherish everything he's done for us and all that.
Right.
Who will be the next head coach? And I put down a couple names. I know John Miller and Chris Williams, they put Bob Stoops. I would absolutely love it. I know he's a little older. He's 63, but could he come for 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit more? I mean, it would instant
credibility right there.
Yes. And you could instantly get some transfers, some good recruits coming to Iowa because of what Bob Stoops has done,
his track record
and his legacy, right? So that would be a home run hire. Some other guys. I mean, I also put like his brother Mark Stoops from Kentucky. You know, he has ties to Iowa. I know it's like, would he leave an SEC program? But I think, like, since he has ties to Iowa, he played at Iowa, maybe he would. I mean, Iowa's a pretty attractive job because of the Big Ten. And I know the SEC is probably a step ahead of the Big Ten, but you're talking Kentucky, a basketball school, and in a really, really, really tough conference that it's going to be so hard to compete with those Southern schools. At least with Iowa, you're not competing with Alabama and Georgia every year. I mean, yeah, you're competing with Ohio State and some of those teams, but so like maybe him. I put Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator at Washington. He has ties to Iowa. He's from Kingsley, Iowa, which is in Western Iowa. I put Chris Kielman, the quarterback, or the offensive coordinator or head coach, excuse me, at Kansas State. And then I also put LeVar Woods, because I do think, I know they talked about LeVar Woods.
Yeah.
I'm to the point where, like, I wouldn't mind that at all, because I think LeVar Woods would be willing to change things up. He is a younger dude, and it's kind of like what John Miller and Williams said. He has ties to the program. He knows how Iowa does, but he would be willing to accept the reality that things do need to be a little change, but he would keep the core of what Iowa does. And that's, good offensive line play. That's how you win, good in the trenches, good special teams. And you would get that with LeVar Woods. Everything LeVar Woods has done has turned to gold. Look at the tight end position when he used to be tight ends coach, George Kittle, some of those guys, now special teams. Like, the dude is a stud. Everything I've heard is he is so good at building relationships. He's such a good, such a good dude in general. I wouldn't mind him either. If you want to stay inside the program, I would not be mad at all if they gave LeVar Woods the shot. But for me, if I had to pick, I would obviously pick Bob Stoops. I mean, I just think that would be a home run hire. I just think it's unreal. I wouldn't say it's unrealistic. I just think it would be a long shot, but it'd be a really, really good day if that ever happened. That's if Kirk obviously hangs it up.
Yeah. I would start there as well. I would call Bob Stoops if he decided to retire, Kirk did. I would call Bob Stoops. They kind of mentioned it and be like, make him tell you no, right? Like,
yeah,
because I agree. I think you not only get the players, but you get some really good coaches to come with you. And I think he's got a wide range of, just people that he probably knows and would be willing to work for him. I think, yeah. And I agree with you. If we were going to hire inside the program, I want LeVar Woods and LeVar Woods only, because I think he has learned under Kirk for how many years. And I agree with you. And they talked about it. And John Miller made a really good point. It's like, he understands Iowa. He understands the recruiting. He understands kind of, we're not going to get the 4 and 5 stars like every other team. We have to be able to develop these guys. A lot of these great Iowa players are really no-name guys coming in for the most part. So he understands that, and I think he accepts that. But like you said, he has done a phenomenal job wherever he's been assigned to in this Iowa program. So I just think, and he's younger, and I think that is something that attracts me a little bit too. It's like, let's get a little bit younger. I think that just bodes well with some of these players and stuff like that.
He's 45 years old. I think with LeVar Woods too, if you did make him head coaches, I think you would be able to retain some of the assistant coaches, such as Phil Parker, Seth Wallace.
With, like, Phil Parker, that was my question. Like, it's Kirk's done. Phil just like, well, I'm done. I love
I
Kirk.
think it
Like,
really depends
I
on who
don't
the
know
next
his
head coach is.
relationship.
It depends on who the next head coach is, and depends on what they would do, who they would hire as assistants. I think with LeVar Woods, it would be the best shot that we would keep most of the coaching staff on board, because you would have someone within the program kind of taking that next step.
Yeah.
I think you would, like I said, I think you would keep Seth Wallace, Phil Parker, some of those guys. I think when if you go with like Bob Stoops, like maybe because, he has ties with Iowa, maybe some of those guys would be willing to stay. But I think if you completely go out of the box, you completely bring in someone new, like let's say Beth completely goes outside, then at that point, I don't know. I really don't know if some of those guys would stay or not. It just kind of depends. But, like I said, we could have this discussion for a long time. And obviously right now, like I said, if I'm going to be willing to bet, I think Kirk will stay. But I'm giving like a 30%, right? 70% chance he stays, 30% he doesn't. All I'm saying, if he does stay, please, for the love of God, Kirk, please do not put your ego in front of the program, and please do something about the offense and actually land a good offensive coordinator, and not just some guy like John Budmeyer, who it would be the same exact thing. Literally, you might as well just put Brian back out there at that point.
Well, I was going to say, why he might as well just come out and say it's not going to change, because if that's the case, that you're exactly right. I mean, we're back to having the same conversation. And I just think we're like we talk about, we're in a crucial time, Collin. Next year is a lot different. It's this whole new Big Ten it's crazy, along with the new playoff and everything like that. 12 teams, man, if we had a better offense, you can't tell me that we would not make a 12-team playoff with a better offense. The way that we play defensive special teams, if we had a better offense, I give ourselves a good shot.
Yeah, exactly. In most years, yep, for sure. Because come next year, like the thing now, like right now, only like sometimes you'll see two conference teams go the 14 playoff, but more than likely not, it's just usually one. Yep. But in a 12-team playoff, you might see 2 or 3. So you don't even have to finish like first. Like you still might make it. You might be the third, and you might make it still.
On like it was like Chris Williams, and I don't know if it was John or not, but they were like talking. They're like, there could be a year like where like 4 teams from like the Big Ten could get in, just because of how competitive it is.
Exactly. Think about this year. Think about if the 12-team playoff started this year, and let's say
Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan would probably all be in it if they only all.
And then think about if we had Washington, Oregon right now, they would be in it as well. So there'd be like 6 teams in the playoff. Like seriously, how can you say no to? I mean, as of right now, those teams they all deserve to be in it. Correct. So think about like this year, it'd be like 6, unless maybe
the team falls off at the end, right?
Yeah, but as of right now, it would be all 6 of those teams, or 5 of those teams. Yep. So this is what annoys me as we switch gears now to the game this weekend. Another thing that annoyed me yesterday from the presser, it just goes to show how incompetent we are, and just Kirk and Brian, and just like, what are we doing? Sounds like Deacon Hill, who is completing 37% of his passes, 427 total yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 turnovers, 3 interceptions, 3 fumbles, and a QBR of 8.4 is a clear-cut starter, and that they are just unwilling to try out another guy because of the other guy playing better in practice. And once again, I don't want people to think that like if Joey got the start that everything is going to be better, because it probably won't be. But you can't tell me that, hey, let's give this other guy just a shot to just see what happens. But nope, it sounds like Deacon Hill is a clear-cut starter, unless Kirk was just saying that just to say it. So Northwestern thinks or prepares for just Deacon. I have no idea, but it kind of sounds like it's a clear 1, clear 2, clear 3, which, going back to what you said 20 minutes ago, that's on the coaches. Like if Deacon Hill is truly our best quarterback in the quarterback room, that is pretty pathetic and sad. And that is on you not developing these players. I mean, Joey's been in the program for 2 years now. If he's not ready to go yet, that is on you. That is on you, Kirk. That is on you, Brian.
Here's my thing that I'm super frustrated with. If like Kirk comes back next year, like what quarterback? Like, this is why we're not competitive at the quarterback position also, because we're not going to get anyone that they're not going to want to come here, because they're not going to even have a chance to start unless they're injured, unless the starter's injured. We don't even give other guys shots when they deserve it. Even if Joey isn't playing as good in practice, which, by the way, I highly doubt. But if that's the case, if I'm Joey Labus, I'm transferring. It's like, I'm done. Why would I sit here for every year for me? You just read off the stats. How much worse can it really get with Deacon Hill?
Especially because Joey's played in a game. Like, we've seen him play in a game. He wasn't that bad against Kentucky. Now, I get it. Kentucky had some guys out on defense, guys that kind of opted out, some injuries. But we've seen Joey in a real game, and he didn't look that bad.
I actually feel bad for like Joey Labus, to be honest with you. And I don't see the practice. I don't see how he looks. I get all that. But we like that. And like I said, that's just where, like, if I'm like a quarterback, like, it's so hard for me to believe that like I would ever get like the shot. Like, if I didn't win that starting job, it's like, do you just transfer under Kirk because you're not getting a shot unless that guy gets injured.
Not only that, but they constantly throw shade at the backups. I mean, remember last year someone asked about the backup quarterback. I can't think of his name, Padilla, and Brian came back. What's the upside? Like, what is it? Like, if I was like Padilla, like, I would be like, really? Like, my confidence would go so down. Then
they make it seem like they're just bottom of the barrel.
Yes.
Also, and they don't see how that would look bad on them as the coaching staff, as the offensive coordinator, as the quarterback's coach. That is mind blowing to me. How you can just sit up there and say that. Yeah.
And then this year, it's a clear 1, clear 2, clear 3. That goes to like, that tells like Joey that like, wow, like they must really think I'm terrible. Like, I don't know. I just think like their optics are always so bad when it comes to these backups. And I'm not saying like these backups are going to be better, like going to magically make our offense better. But like, man, like when it's that bad, when you have a QBR of 8.4 and you are still unwilling after a bye week, after 2 weeks to prepare, you're still unwilling to just give the backup a shot. That says something.
Here's the other thing.
Says something very telling.
Make Northwestern at least kind of try to prepare for maybe 2 guys. Like, are we that dumb that we're just like, nope, doesn't matter. He's playing. We're so dumb when it comes to things like this.
I don't
seriously. For how good we are in the other 2 phases, it just makes me wonder how we can be so dumb on one side of the football. I'm sorry. Really that's where I'm at with this offense. We don't know what we're doing anymore.
It goes back to what I said like 3 weeks ago. We don't have an offensive guru on the offensive side. I hate saying that word, but it's like true. We just don't. We don't have that offensive expert that knows how to scheme against defenses, make adjustments.
Even if we did, that's where it's like, it begs the question: would Kirk even allow him to do what he does? Probably
exactly.
Not.
Who knows? So going to this game, it's 2:30 kickoff on Peacock at Wrigley Field, which is going to be kind of cool. I wish I was going, but it'll be cool to see on TV too, just playing on in such a historic baseball stadium. Iowa 6-2, Northwestern 4-4. To be completely honest with you, they have kind of been the surprise team in the Big Ten. I thought they would be god awful this year, especially with everything they went through. I mean, I thought they were going to be bad regardless. And then when all that came down with Pat Fitzgerald, I thought like, wow, did they even win a game this year? And I'm going to be honest, they've been really competitive in almost every game. They don't quit. They try, and that's where I'm nervous about this game. I think we are clearly the better team, but when you have a team like Northwestern, they have really nothing to lose. They're playing competitive, man. Like, it's going to be a close game. Like, it's going to be a close game. It's going to, I feel like, come down to the wire, just like every other game, because their offense blows. The line is Iowa -5, and the over-under is at a historic low of 30.5. So it did go back up. It was at 29.5, but is it now at 30.5? And man, like, even that low, I feel like it's going to hit the under, which is very sad to say. Just a couple quick things, and then you can kind of just talk about the game or what you kind of think. But Northwestern's offense, similar to Iowa, really bad. They are one of the worst teams in total yards a game and also scoring. Their run game is horrible, which if you think about our defense and our run defense, like, we should have no problem. This is the part that I'm like really worried about, especially if we go with Deacon, is what Northwestern is good at is they have the 20th best passing defense in the country, giving up only 187 yards.
Oh boy.
That scares me because
we're not hitting at 187.
No, we're not even getting close to that. So that's where I think like this game is going to be very low scoring.
Yeah.
I think this is a game where like, I think if it is Deacon, he's going to struggle, and we better bring in Joey at some point. And even if he struggles, well, at least you tried something different and just tried something. Going to be a very just interesting game to see, obviously this last week and the distractions and, how do we play? How do we look? I'm sure the camera will be on Brian Ferentz a lot on Peacock. They'll be talking about it. Going to be very interesting to see what the game plan is like, knowing like if I'm Brian, knowing that like in 2 months I'm fired. I go back to the analogy of like my boss called me today and was like, hey, by the way, you're fired on January 1st. Like for me, it's like, okay, well, whatever I'm doing at that point when he called me, I'd be like, I would shut my laptop off and be like, well, screw it. I'm going to coast the next 2 months. So I don't know how it's going to be. Yeah, I don't know. I'm anxious to hear what you kind of think. And then, yeah, you can give your prediction.
Yeah, I would say anyone who's not an Iowa or Northwestern fan will probably not be watching this game. This might be one of the lowest scoring games.
Well, I will say, although I think maybe some people will tune in now with the whole Brian Ferentz saga and just kind of see what. But outside of that, you're right. Like, why would anyone want to watch this game if you're not a fan?
I mean, maybe they love the Cubs and Wrigley Field. I don't know. But no, I agree. I think there's a lot of interesting storylines that I'm excited to see play out throughout this game. I totally agree with you. I think the camera is going to be on Brian and Kirk, and they're definitely going to be talking about that situation. I'm kind of interested to kind of hear, these broadcasters' perspective on it. In terms of the actual game, I do think it's going to be very low scoring, and it would not surprise me. I've said this, that every game from now until the end of the year will probably be within a possession because our defense is so good and our offense is so bad.
Yep.
And I don't expect Deacon to come out and look like a world beater. He might be the worst division or Power 5 QB in the country. I've heard that. And do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? I haven't seen a worse starting 37%.
He's horrible. He's the worst quarterback in D1 football.
I apologize to you, Spencer Petras. I didn't know how bad it could actually get.
I know. I was gonna say, would you take Spencer Petras right now? Because I sure in hell would, which is not really saying much, but
yes. And he wasn't good, but he's not Deacon Hill. Man, So prediction, man, this is tough. You said it's 30.5 or total. Oh boy. I don't even really know because like you said, how do we handle the distractions? How do we, does Brian play with coach call plays, if you will, with an extra chip on his shoulder? I don't know. I don't see it changing. There's nothing that gives me a reason to believe that this is going to change. I do think Northwestern's not going to score very many points, but I don't believe we will either. I think Northwestern's going to do what every other team does, try to stop the run, and force us to throw. And like you just mentioned, they have actually a really good pass defense. I mean, your top 20, that's actually really good. So I'll go. I don't even know. I'll go 17-10. We win. Hits the under. We're like a horrible game to watch, but we win.
Yep, we win. Isn't it funny how, like, for me, like, I'm excited
to. We've talked. Well, really quick, Collin. Here's the other thing, and we've talked about it in the past as a reason that they don't do this. Is it they don't want to bring in Joey because it might look a little better? Is that a thing? We've talked about that in past when we say, oh, should Padilla play or Labus or whoever. I don't know.
It's a good question. It's like it makes you wonder like what the actual reasons are. Yeah. And if like I said, if you're judging, like if he's not very good at practice, like
because if Joey comes out and balls, they're gonna say the same thing. It's like, well, what the hell? Why hasn't he been playing the last 9 weeks?
Yep, the entire time. Yeah, because like hypothetically, let's just say like he came in Northwestern game and actually looked somewhat decent. Then we're asking the question like, why didn't he not play in the Minnesota game? So yeah, I don't know.
Because I don't believe there's that big of a gap between Northwestern and Minnesota. I really don't. I don't think Minnesota's that good.
No, I don't think so either. So actually, before all this happened, with the whole Brian Ferentz thing, I was kind of thinking of topics to talk about tonight. This was on Sunday, and I had actually where I had the remaining schedule for the rest of the Big Ten West teams, like the teams that are like more than likely like still in it to win the West. And like we were going to go through each schedule, but obviously with all this happening, we can save that for another week. But yeah, like I was going to talk about like Minnesota. Like Minnesota is not a good football team. Like we should not have lost to them. And it pains me to think that we even lost. And, even outside of that call, it should never got to that point. Minnesota is not a good football team. And that's what just annoys the shit out of me that it even came to that point where, literally, and you take away a couple of the fumbles that the worst quarterback in D1 football had, Deacon Hill. They don't even get one or two of those field goals. So like, it's so annoying.
And that's where I'm at with Deacon. Okay, you complete 37%. You're a bad quarterback. If you're fumbling now and turning it over once, twice, every single game, get out of there, dude. Now we literally can't do anything. So
yeah. I'm going to take our Rick Webster on Twitter. He had this tweet out it was like a week ago. And he put, Iowa views the quarterback position as which quarterback is less likely to lose them the game rather than which one can help them make a play to win it. And that tells you everything you need to know about their 100%. Offensive philosophy. And it's so true. It's always been that way under Kirk. It's like whichever quarterback, it's like Spencer Petras, game manager.
Right. And more experience doesn't mean he's better, but he's been in those moments. It's like, we play not to lose, Collin.
And what's funny is, okay, if that's your philosophy, then why is Deacon Hill in there? Because he has 6 turnovers since he started playing.
Question.
So why is he even in there? He has more turnovers than he has touchdown passes. He has as many turnovers as his QBR rating. 6 turnovers, 8 point something. I forgot. I wrote it down somewhere. 8.4, something like that. Just absolutely terrible. It's just so funny.
You have a QBR of 8 point. I mean,
it's so bad.
I don't even know how that's real.
It's so funny because like this offense is so bad, and like it's like, why do I even get excited for the games? But I do. Like I'm excited to watch Iowa football. I hated these last 2 weeks of no Iowa football. It's like, man, like I guess I'm a diehard fan. I don't know. But
listen, you have to be kind of sick to be an Iowa fan, right? Like it is what it is. We bitch and we complain, but we sure as hell will tune in or go to the game on a Saturday. So
exactly.
That's what it is.
So yeah, my prediction real quick. I have like 13-10. So kind of similar to you. Give up maybe a touchdown. I mean, I know we didn't really touch on it, but like I watched that Northwestern Maryland game a little bit because I had bet on that game, and they played really good that day. Like I was actually very surprised how good the offense looked. Now, Maryland, they're such a confusing team to me. I don't know what Maryland, like, they start off the year, and it happens every year. They start off the year so good. Everyone thinks like Maryland's, going to be a wild card in the East. And then they just have a horrible final stretch, and they have yet to win a game in the month of October. So I don't know what's more telling. Was Northwestern just, a lot better than we think, or is Maryland that bad last week? So, I just don't think Northwestern's offense is going to be able to do much against our defense. So I think 10 points, is probably the cap. And then, like Iowa's offense, man, like I think even getting to 13 might be a struggle for us, especially the way it's been. So going to be very intriguing just to kind of see how this game plays out, given everything that has happened the past few days. I'm definitely interested to see all that. So any final thoughts before we hang it up for the night?
Yeah, I'm like, I want to reiterate back to the last pod. Beth had to do this. Beth had to fire Brian Ferentz. It was not getting better. It was progressively getting worse. And you have to do something to show. I mean, at the end of the day, show the fans, give them a reason to show up, give them a reason to get excited again. And
exactly.
Why are we watching this game? Because now we know Brian's gone, and what's he going to do? Right. I mean, there's this new kind of juice within the program for the fans, I think. And I will say this, like I've said it should be interesting to, when we get back to Kinnick, I know it'll be a little bit, it's going to be interesting to see those fans, what they're cheering.
What it's going to be like. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I saw crazy. A t-shirt today that someone made, and it said, Beth gets it. That's kind of funny.
That's cool.
So, well, that will do it for this episode. We'll be back on, maybe this is the game that we do an instant reaction. I know last time we said it and it never happened, but I'm not going to promise that because
home,
it just kind of all depends on how we're feeling after the game. But
yeah,
we'll definitely have a reaction podcast up on Sunday to go over the game and anything else. And then, let's just try to enjoy these last 4 games with Brian. And then hopefully a couple more games after that, but especially these last 4 and hopefully better times ahead. So
yeah.
That will do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. As always, have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.